Hello, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Kehan Kabambi, and I'm the program officer with the New Jersey Birth Equity Funders Alliance, otherwise known as NJBEFA. And we are very excited to have you all join us today for our Lunch and Learn series focused on marketing and branding. So our Lunch and Learn series today is actually the second of six different sessions. And this series was meant to really be a resource for community-based organizations and community leaders that are driving birth equity in New Jersey and beyond. So we've been very fortunate to have a variety of different professional service providers come to this table and really share their knowledge and expertise with our grantee community and the wider grassroots birth equity community as well. And today we're very excited to have Heather Brady, who's actually NJBEFA's own comms consultant, who has been for almost 3 years now. And Heather is going to be giving a discussion on branding and specifically how detailed strategy work can make your day-to-day communications more sustainable. So after Heather's presentation, we'll have a short Q&A. So as Heather's presenting, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll be managing and keeping an eye on all the questions, and we'll pull them up for the actual Q&A session. After the Q&A session, then we'll also share a short survey just asking about your feedback about the presentation, which is very useful for us because this is a new series. And so just gathering everyone's input to see how we can constantly improve and make this as impactful as possible for you is very important to us. So please take the time to complete the survey. And then after that, we'll wrap up and we'll try to be mindful of time because this is an hour-long session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather. And I'll also stop sharing my screen so you can take over, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Let me just do that now. And how we look. You see my screen? Oh, we're good. Okay. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for making time for this today. So I'm going to dive in and just say hi again. As Karen shared, my name is Heather, and for the last almost 3 years, I've been fortunate to work with NJBEFA, consulting on and helping to really manage their communications with an emphasis on social media, on launching our monthly newsletter series, and maintaining the original NJBEFA website, and more recently, doing a bit of a refresh there. So most recently, and based on a need that all of us at NJBEFA have felt for a while, we are starting to focus a bit more on brand strategy, which is the same thing I'm here and excited to talk with all of you about today. So just to give you a sense of how I come to this work before diving in, my background is originally in nonprofits, and for a long time I worked within arts and education spaces. I made the shift into consulting when I had my son, Julian, 5 going on 6 years ago. And while I still do a lot of arts related work, I came to maternal health and birth equity following my own birthing and postpartum experiences, which, not to go into the details of my story here and now, I'll just say made me think very deeply about how I could use my skills and my work to contribute to ensuring that other mothers felt safe and seen and listened to and supported throughout their perinatal journeys. Most recently, I've begun the process of giving this consulting work a new form, as with Studio. So just sharing this to say that my goal with the studio is really to further support and continue working with mission, purpose, and heart-driven people like all of you. So as is true with everything I do with NJBEFA, it really is an honor and joy to share this bit of time with you all today. So for the session, I'm just going to say at the start that this marketing or communication session is not going to be the kind that talks about the algorithms we're all, at least in the land of social media, at constant mercy of. This is the kind of session that's going to sit on the opposite end of the spectrum and be a little bit more foundational and essential. We're going to focus on how articulating in a detailed way what makes your work your own, who you want it to reach and how you want it to be presented and resonate through your communications, how articulating all of this can have long-term value and use across any and all communications channels you're using or working in yourself. As you will see in this agenda over the next short while, we're going to walk through what typically makes up a brand strategy. We are going to reflect, I should say, I'll reflect a little bit on my own experience of using and working with AI for communications work. And before we shift into Q&A, I'll talk a little bit about how a brand strategy or this kind of work can support sustaining your communications, like your social media efforts or otherwise, and hopefully help you avoid burnout. Because our focus today is on strategy, I always feel like the best way to start is really with, what that is. If your brand is your business's identity, the strategy is the brand blueprint. It's the foundation, it's the document that contains the information and details on what distinguishes your brand from any other. It is meant to serve as an overarching and long-term tool, holding things like your mission and values, defining your unique perspective on the world and what you do, and reflecting who you want to serve and how you want to position yourself and be perceived when you're doing that. Brand strategy is thinking about your communications. However, it's a useful tool beyond communications too. So the essential elements in a strategy answer the why of your business and brand. And if they're done right, a strategy is going to provide overall direction and alignment for your communications efforts. That is the goal. Where the essential elements of a brand strategy focus on your why, a brand guide, which ideally is part of your overall strategy work, typically focuses on how your brand is presented to or shows up in the world. It covers things like your logo. It's about your visual identity and standards, right? So logos, go-to palettes, color palettes, the fonts and typography and visual imagery you use, with guidelines for the visual content you create. A style guide, if ever you're working with someone who distinguishes between the two, covers guidelines or typically covers the guidelines related to your brand's actual voice, with notes on tone, the language or vocabulary your brand prefers to use, sometimes punctuation guidelines, notes on how you format your written communications. And this again is across channels, right? It's guidelines for your tone of voice, your written communications across channels, and offers information on how, as example, you might talk about yourself as a business or entity and also your audience or community. All of these things, again, if they're done, ideally they're done as part of a single strategy project, but not always. But all of them are meant to create clarity, consistency, and direction for your brand across channels. That said, if you are thinking about doing any of this kind of work and you have to prioritize, or you feel like I've already got some of the pieces figured out, right? I like the way my content looks, but something like that. If you don't have some of the essentials that we are soon going to talk about, identity, sort of building essentials, and some key guidelines and goals for your communications outlined already, I am always going to advocate for doing the big picture strategy work first. I am a visual person. I care deeply about, brand presentation to the world in my work. but not at the expense of having well-articulated, descriptive guidelines, goals, and direction. In terms of strategy, content, and essentials or identity, sort of building essentials, what are we really talking about? I mentioned before, you want your strategy to include things like your mission, your vision, your values, things that more than likely, if you're doing already service-oriented, mission-driven work, maybe you're a nonprofit or you work with one, more than likely you have these things mapped out and written. From there, when we're doing brand work, brand strategy work, we want to go a little bit further with elements that strengthen or will sort of guide and inform our brand identity. So we want to get down to and articulate your specific point of view, who you are ideally aiming to reach with your communications or serve through your work, and what you uniquely offer. We want to articulate a point of view. How do you specifically think about or approach the work, the situation, the problem you are focused on? Your point of view clarifies and guides your overall communication strategy and direction. You want to articulate who you serve. This is also very often known as your target audience. But who are you trying to reach? What do you know about them? What do they care about? What are their interests? How do they show up and where do they spend their time online? These are the kinds of things in a descriptive way you want to tease out in your brand strategy work. And and many of us do, if there are multiple audiences that come to mind when you're thinking about your communications, but you're not in a position to work with a firm and map out a bunch of different personas. You're sort of a skinny org just trying to do some really clear thinking strategy work that'll help guide what you're doing already right now. The best advice I've been given about audience description when you have multiple audiences that are in your mind to reach is just to focus on what they all have in common. Start there. Your offer, also typically referred to as your unique value proposition. This is a concise statement. You want to put language to what you uniquely offer or promise in relation to your target audience, your community members, and their interests and needs. When you do this work, the more descriptive, the more narrative you can be, the better. The better for you, for your audience, and long term, the better for anyone else who you might engage to support your communications efforts. So what you're seeing on the screen is an example. And to be clear, it's a draft. It's not hypothetical because I'm in this process right now of thinking about this work for NJ BEFA, but it's not complete. It's not finished. And that's just important. These things take a little bit of time and we want to get the language right. But what you're seeing on the screen hopefully gives you an idea of sort of the length of a point of view statement as example, and how you marry sort of your mission and your goals with this more descriptive narrative language that just gives us a little bit more to work with. Why do we do this? We do this because when we get into the details of our whys, our audience, our offers, we, one, get to become clearer ourselves. Strategy should give us an opportunity to sort of pull back, reflect, sharpen our focus. And also, we will then end up with foundational identity elements from which to build the rest or any other sort of content, messaging plans, or frameworks around. So these elements are your brand and messaging anchors. They're meant to be your rudders. When you develop them, though, this is internal work. What's really nice is you will often also have some more immediate language and ideas you can weave into the content you're creating. Just as with your mission, vision, and values, when you take time with these things, with your point of view, your audience, and what you know about them, articulating what you uniquely offer, again, all of this becomes anchors to check every other brand related or communication thing you create after against. So as you develop a strategy, you can use those building blocks, those essential identity components or building blocks, to sort of form the baseline from which to then also articulate goals and outline plans, brand and communication related plans that might prepare you for things like increasing awareness or expanding your reach. You might set yourself up to get folks who are seeing your content, your newsletters, your website to complete some sort of desired action, right? You might, maybe you're more focused on something like establishing authority, right? Having your expertise in your work and field shine and come through a bit more than it does right now. Whatever the goals are, we want to outline them in the strategy as we're setting up these brand and identity building blocks. Keeping in mind, of course, that as you start doing the implementation part, your goals will change, right? So we'll revisit them because things will work. And yeah, you'll need to keep growing. Ultimately, when we dig into the details of all of this, and it's why I'm spending time on it, the details of your brand, your audience, as you develop guidelines for your content, including how it looks, how you want it to feel, again, the voice of the tone of it, and then outline your goals and how the content you create will help to meet them. Ultimately, when we do all of that, the work that follows should highlight not only why you do what you do, but also how you do it differently from anyone else, right? Or as I'm saying in the slide, how it will uniquely benefit your community. Okay, I'm gonna pause just for a second because I'm zipping through and just say, I do feel like it's a lot. I know it's a lot to live in a world where we are all expected to be brands and communication folks, marketers, designers, content creator, right? We live in this world. Even though it's the work that I do, and I do it very happily and very gratefully, I do resist that this is a must for all of us as like individuals and then as businesses too, business owners. Similarly, the topic of working with AI also can bring up a lot questions, thoughts, and so I'm going to spend a little time on that. I said, and when we were preparing to share information on this workshop, that I would offer insights on to AI or not to AI. But really, what I want to say is whether or not you do or don't use it, of course, is a personal decision. But if and when, and maybe you already are, because there are so many tools and so many ways AI is integrating into our work and our workflows, if and when you do use it for brand or communications related work, which is one way or another all about your unique story, your unique offer, what you get from an AI tool is only ever going to be as good as what you give. So the work of investing time in articulating, again, the kind of whys and hows you do when you're pulling back and doing the strategy work for your brand, the work of sort of really describing these basic but essential aspects of who you are, your brand's identity, and again, strategy, it's just as helpful to do if you're relying heavily on AI to generate content for you across any sort of channel as if you're not. Because as sophisticated as AI is, and it is more and more so every single day, and again, can be very useful if it's something you choose to use. What it just can't do, like not Chat, not Claude, not Jasper, not any of the tools, What they just cannot account for is your perspective. Again, I use the word unique a lot, but your unique perspective, right? AI cannot account for your unique why, the sensitivity you bring to your audience because you know them, you have a connection to them, or the unique way you want to frame your offer. So we have to give to get something really high quality back. So this said, I did in advance of this session, just for my own sort of experiment, ask ChatGPT what they might tell an org who wanted them to build a brand strategy using mission, vision, and value statements to guide the effort. If you work with tools like this, you know they're really can be very capable. They're definitely competent. But I was actually like pleasantly surprised by the response I got because it reflects the nuances that are going to be a part of this kind of work, whether you're doing it on your own, like you're just carving out time with a template and saying, I really need to step back and think about my point of view, right? Or how visually I'm presenting my business to the world. You can do that on your own. You can do that with a trusted friend, with a board, with a team, with a consultant or a firm, or with an AI, support or model. But what we get from this answer about how it's an exciting opportunity, but is just that, yes, AI can help you with this work in the same way a human can, but they're going to need some key details from you first. However you do this work, and by this work again, I'm talking about strategy or just sort of the thinking about your brand's identity and building some guidelines and structure around goals and what you want to create, how you want to disseminate it. However you do this work, once we are in implementing mode, in the day-to-day doing mode, communications and marketing takes time, right? We know that wherever you are in the spectrum of doing this work or just having your own sort of profiles out there in the world on social, on your own websites, you have a Substack or a newsletter, this kind of work can drain us, even if and when we are inspired by it, we enjoy it, we are fed by it. And again, I've been just zipping. But before we shift into Q&A, I want to just connect this idea of the value of doing some strategic brand work and thinking in the interest of avoiding communications burnout. We all live in this world where the premise now exists that to be viable, certainly as a business, not only should you have a presence on various platforms, but you need to be creating content for them. You need to be showing up every day on them, maybe multiple times a day, engaging in multiple different ways. This premise is something that if you're not already, and I imagine even within our NJ Buffett team, I know some of us already push against this, which is where I'm going, and I think is a good thing. If you're not pushing against this premise, if you're feeling already just overwhelmed by the expectations around your communications or presenting your brand to the world on the daily, this is a premise that is worth pushing against. When you're building a strategy and mapping out things, which this is a part of it, your goals and maybe big picture plans for how you're going to realize them through content creation or across different channels, keep in mind that you have an opportunity to push against the premise of you must do all of these things in a strategic way. So the plan gives us a space to think really strategically about what we want to do in the land of brand communications for our business, for our work. I'm talking a lot about social because I know like there's so much pressure around it, but being on social or digital platforms is useful. No question about it. No question. However, it is not, should not be the sole focus of your time. If you're on this call, if you're part of the NJ Buffa community, I know with no shadow of a doubt that you are doing much more important things in your day-to-day life and work. Also, just it's worth saying that when we sort of succumb to the pressure that you must to be viable, and that includes like having a presence on a number of different channels, the more time we spend on creating for them and being on them, the more we are benefiting the folks who created them, right? So when you're doing your planning, you want to ask yourself questions like, how does all this work serve or align with my organizational goals? What channels really make the most sense to prioritize from my audience, right? How much time do you as an individual, if you don't have a communications team, how much time do you have for this work? And what will consistency look like? What does success look like to you if you're pouring in, right? So what we're aiming for in pretty laser-like way is just that question, what do we want to get from the effort that you are pouring in? The more clarity we have about all of these things together, so starting from mission, vision, values to point of view, audience, value proposition, what you want your brand, when you present it to the world, what you want that to look and feel and sound like, and then what are the real goals and how, in a big picture, just sort of broad brushstrokes way, how do you envision realizing them through communications? The more clarity we have about all of this together, the more impactful we can be, regardless of the channel, and the more successful. So ultimately, what helps make communications and marketing work sustainable for the solopreneur, the freelancer, independent contractor, the nonprofit, the birth worker doing this all on their own is clarity. Clarity on who you're trying to reach, clarity on the messages, your messages, what they're meant to look and sound like, how the content you create will serve your goals again, and what channels you want all of that content you're creating to appear on, show up on, to use to distribute it. Clarity on all of this should be heavily shaped as well by how much time you are able to or want to invest in this work. Some of us enjoy it, are inspired by it, like to play with it. Some of us want, to keep things a little bit tighter because this isn't, the place where they really want to spend the bulk of their time or administrative time. So if you embed these considerations in a strategy, then the implementing, the doing will feel easier. And importantly, when things when they don't feel easy, when they're not working, you have your own clear or additional clear and detailed thinking to help you reflect on your why and on the why of like what's not working, why is it not working, right? We can reflect your brand strategy guidelines. This identity work around your brand and communications can help you course correct and or pivot entirely without compromising the integrity of your brand as a whole. And that's really what we're after. So it's not about creating a plan that doesn't allow for experimentation or creativity, but we want some things to always be true about our brand and our work. So clearly and ideally, I am a plan person, but at the same time, and I know lots of times, the plan, this kind of plan that I'm talking about, and we're going to talk about more in Q&A, A lot of times it comes after the work or the business is born, right? I have been working with NJ Beffa for almost 3 years, and we definitely did not have this kind of plan when we started. We have been talking about it for almost as long as I've been engaged, but we're a new organization. And in the last year, it's possible you were involved in some way in some of the work NJ Beffa began to do around having these sort of brand and identity conversations. But it's really now that we're digging in, that we're saying it's time. And I'll just say, if you're in that boat, you're like, my business is in full swing. I am out there in the world. I see the value, but am I too far along already? I'll just say there are advantages to zooming out and doing this kind of work once you've been in motion for a while. From a communications perspective, sometimes it's even better, at least for the planning, because you have existing information, ideas, thinking, experience, and brand related work and communications work out in the world that can help guide then the conversations you have around what's working, what really is our point of view, and onward. Whenever you do this and however you do it, and again, this can be done on your own. It can be done with a team member, a trusted, just someone who like you work really well with. Use them as a sounding board with a community group, stakeholders that you're already serving, with a firm, with something like Claude or Chat GPT helping you sort of iterate. There's any number of ways to do it, but when you do it, the promise I would make is that the more detailed and comprehensive your plan, the better the output is going to serve you and your goals and your audience. And when you do the planning, then the actual doing, because you're giving it more structure, more clarity, can be, stands to be more manageable too. So we only have a little bit of time. So I zipped through, and I'm really going to stop here so we can have a little bit more of a conversation. And before doing that, I'll just say that I hope so far this has been helpful. And yeah, I think I'm going to stop sharing so we can shift.
Thank you so much, Heather. There is a question in the chat from Erica. She asked, do you recommend using a scheduler for social media content? If so, what platform is helpful?
Great question. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I really knew I was going to focus this on sort of the essentials of building your brand and your strategy. But the conversation, Erica, you're asking is like, the kind I get a lot and I think about a lot, and this changes. Right now, I would say I do like a scheduler, particularly, if you're juggling a number of different things, responsibilities in your work. I think it can be really helpful. Also helpful if you're the kind of person, if you're doing your own social, Erica, and you like to batch content, like you have a chunk of time every week, every month, where you can just sort of say, okay, I'm just going to focus on these things. I want to batch. I like Buffer for scheduling and managing. I like it because it's super affordable, super straightforward. You can manage multiple accounts and profiles on it with ease. There's not a lot of extra or fluff. It does offer you some AI writing support and caption generation if you're someone who likes that support too. It's not the best, but it does offer that. But from a pure sort of scheduling standpoint, I'm a fan of Buffer just for like what you get for the dollar investment too, because I think about that pretty carefully.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else? And Trayshawn, I'm just seeing your comment from earlier. I did notice that, but just I love doing this work. So thank you for acknowledging it. But yeah, I say it all the time to the NJ Buffett team. I think they maybe get tired of hearing it, but yeah, like this is heart driven work for me. And I feel like it's really important. So again, I was really thrilled to be, and I am thrilled to be doing this today with all of you too. Oh, Jamie, I'm so glad. Jamie, I see you also in the land of LinkedIn and on social. And I was saying at the start, it's really nice to just see names of folks that I see in these spheres. Your LinkedIn is like the content you share is really, really wonderful. I love seeing it, a great model for just that. It's not a bridge because nothing feels like you're forcing it or planning it, but just the balance of sharing like what's on your mind, what you're seeing in the world, what's happening, and then like shining light on others' good work and engaging with other people's work as well. So if anyone else is on LinkedIn and looking for a good model for like, what do I do on there as an individual versus like as a business and brand, follow Jamie.
Thank you so much. I was not anticipating that at all. So the call out, thanks. That's very, very kind.
Yeah.
Can I just say something about the presentation that you did? I think that like one of the things for me in doing the work that I've done is really like honing in on like my why and my mission and like the vision for the work that I do. And it has really been, I think, a game changer for me because it has allowed me to like really focus on the work that I like choose to do, right? Like as we are presented with opportunities or as things come up or as, you know, you see stuff out there, like just knowing for me, like what my why is and having that articulated allows me to like pick what I work on. Like, does it fit with my vision? Does it fit with the mission of my, like of my soul? And then if it does and it aligns, like it just helps steer everything. So I think I love the fact that you articulated that as something that we need to focus on really early on in the work, as opposed to like kind of trying to make our vision fit with the work that we're doing. Like everything should come from the mission and the vision, right? I don't know. That's kind of what I got. But thank you so much. This is really good.
Yeah, of course. And absolutely. I think, you know, if you're starting from absolute scratch, mission, vision, values, right? Um, and then if you're digging into this sort of like, okay, now I have a business and it's also, I have to think about it like a brand, um, deepening sort of how you think about the why with respect to your communications is really important. It helps. It'll help you again in the long term and prioritize, which is what I hear from you, Jamie. Yeah. Yes. Oh, Rachel, I'm looking at your comment. Lately, I've noticed that a lot of folks' content is starting to sound the same, like AI wrote it. Do you think this is due to not having done the brand strategy work and therefore not feeding it good details up front? I think there's two parts of it. Thank you for raising this, Rachel, right? Like I know, I think all of us know if we're on any sort of social platform, we now can tell pretty quickly what's been like when a caption has been largely written by some sort of AI model or tool. And I don't know, you know, again, depending on who you are, we have these tools available to us. So when I say we can recognize it, I don't mean to dismiss it or discourage it. But yes, Rachel, when it comes to it all sort of sounds the same. I think when we get there, it is what details are you providing, right? And that's where we run into that. I will say, even if, you know, you hear this and say, I don't know that I can do a full blown strategy right now. I would say if you can, take a little time and just start writing out, putting language to, again, sort of point of view. When you're an individual, sort of doing work, a solopreneur, a very small business, the sort of beauty of it is that part is a little bit easier to do than when you're working with a larger business or a collective and you have to establish agreement and alignment across a number of stakeholders. But having that sort of point of view piece done, being able to say a little bit more to the chat tool you're using about your audience, and again, about what makes your work unique, that is going to help that tool, that AI tool, generate content that's a little bit more reflective of you. The only other thing I'll say about it, that because this comes up for me a lot, and especially when some of the work I do, when folks will say, just use chat. This almost should go without saying, but I notice that it's not a given all the time. The first pass, the first results of what you get from them when you ask for, say, a batch of social captions, we don't want to just run with that, right? Like, it's still ideally like it's an iterative process, a little bit of a partnership. I would say, like, think about chat, if you're relying on it heavily for social, as a partner and a support to your work, but you want to, like, still be the one refining, adjusting language, making final edits, and having the final say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I went on a bit, but like, that is such a rich topic right now. And, just with the rise of these tools, the availability. And again, it's personal how much you want to like to use them. And we're only here talking about writing, but like, there's all these tools you can use for visual content, video content, right? But just, I would say, more than anything, yes to being reflective, thinking about your whys, as Jamie said, doing as much of the strategy work you can do to then feed the models if that's how you're working.
We can take one more question before launching the short poll.
Yes, I know I had it in the presentation, but since we're a little quieter before the poll goes up, I'm just gonna put contact for myself in the chat. Please don't hesitate if after this, if you just have questions about any part of the presentation or just, this work in general, I would be happy to hear from you anytime.
Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your expertise. We're going to launch a short poll. This will help us in continuing to curate this learning series for NJBEFA. It will be going up shortly. Thank you in advance for your answers.
And while you're all completing the survey, I'll just wrap us up as well. So thank you so much, Heather, for that great session and all that information about marketing and branding, especially for organizations that might not have a whole comms team. And I think that's really valuable, especially today. So yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us for today's Lunch and Learn. As I mentioned earlier today, this is a series. So this is number 2 of 6, and our next Lunch and Learn series will be on August 14th, and it'll focus on data and storytelling. So I think this ties in really nicely with the information that Heather just shared about, kind of showing your why, connecting to like specific stakeholders. And so thus, on August 14th, we'll have a team come out to kind of show how you can incorporate data into your storytelling when you're doing your outreach to others. So we hope that you will be able to join us all for that conversation. And thank you again for joining us today.